Ready, Tweety? Okay, here we go.
Hi, you guys. So it's Acrylic Painting Monday. This is Ginger Cook, and we're going to be painting a summer landscape today. A lot of you have asked for more landscapes, and we're here. So if you're watching this video, it's being done probably as a premiere because John and I either have circumstances in our own lives where we can't do a live show, but we're traveling. So either way, we're going to have some fun times. We're going to explain some things you might not have thought about when painting a landscape. I want to cover different ways to make greens, and we want to cover some landscape rules. And then we're just going to have a good time. What do you think? Yes, yes, and yes?
Yes, and yes.
All right, so let's get started.
Ooh, that's pretty.
This is I had an original photograph, and I changed a little bit in my computer so that I could kind of simplify it a bit. And I changed the colors. And I know we're not going to show you the photographs. A lot of times these photographs, that's not the point of the lesson. We're not showing you the photograph, but this is what we're painting. And you can grid it in if you want, or because this is 8 by 10 on just a lime green canvas, you can kind of 3 fingers up here. Let's see if I've got a different piece of chalk.
New pencils, I got you.
Yeah, here's a different piece of chalk here like that.
I get you new pencils, you use the old chalk.
Yeah, here we go. So I'm just going to do a kind of a line down there like that, kind of sloping, right? Now I want you to notice that, do you see this almost diamond shape right here? So our landscape is coming along like this, but there's this diamond shape in here where we want a meadow, and then we want to kind of come up kind of this way in front of the house and do something like this. So that's basically, I mean, you don't have to trace something like that on. A lot of times you can just do it like you can do a grid like we've shown you before, or you can just sort of value it in. But remember, if I tell you exactly where this line is, it's right up here, which is about 5 fingers, here, and about 3 here. And this one starts about 3 over here, and about 3 down from the top. So this little diamond shape, that little diamond shape.
Official hand measurements.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, guess you can't see that either. And you said you got me some colored chalk. Well,
no, I got you new pencils.
Oh, all right. Well, let's. I just want you to be that kind of able to see it. Which it's a diamond shape, but.
Again, this is a landscape, and the wind blew. You're in a different angle. It's not that precise. You're not.
Yeah, you don't have to use that. So while I'm doing that, I also want to tell you about our color chart. If you haven't made yourself one of these, if you're watching our YouTube shows from pretty much on from the spring of 2022, we're using this. We're going off of these colors, and over here on our palette we have black, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, burnt umber, burnt sienna, burnt umber. This is buff titanium, okay, which is you could have antique white too, but that's buff titanium, titanium white, yellow oxide, cad yellow medium, cad yellow light. This is more of like a marigold, or Holbein calls it cadmium yellow deep. This is just an orange, cad red, and magenta. So those are the colors that we'll be using. We're using black because black is a good way to make some really nice olive greens, and you don't have to know too much about it. When you're doing when you're starting with a landscape, the first thing you've got to remember is that the farther things are away from you, the grayer and the less bright the colors are. All right. So next time you're driving in the car, what I want you to do is look way down the road and notice the difference between the colors you see there and the ones next to you. It's really, sometimes you just want to kind of have an eye opener. Oh, you get this sort of, oh, I see what you're talking about. All right. So
you have an aha moment.
Yeah, that's what we want you to have, is a bit of an aha moment. Okay. Also, you'll notice that it's a lot harder to distinguish, say, the features of a person that's 3 blocks away as a way if you were just walking next to somebody, walking right up to them. It's the same thing with the details in a landscape. They're going to be more blurred out of focus than they would be as you get forward. So keep in mind when you're painting things, if you have big flat flashes in the back that are dark, you've kind of wreck the whole purpose of the landscape. You don't want to do that, all right? You'll be very aware of this. This is what we call, now write this down, this is called atmospheric perspective. Where things are, the farther things are away, the atmosphere causes the colors and the intensity and the viscosity and the detail of the color of the image to recede. So once you really, we'll ask you at the end of this, remind me, John, I'm going to ask you at the end of this too, the end of this video, did you remember that one thing? Because if you get nothing else out of this landscape and try it, I think you're going to be surprised, okay? So while I'm painting it in, I want to thank our moderators for coming. It's they have, I don't know who's here because again, we're pre-recording this. However, because this will be a premiere, we know we have some moderators. So thank you in advance for coming. And thank you guys in advance for coming. And thank you in advance for, all the donations to the Academy and through our Karen Little Scholarship Fund and for helping us scholarship others to paint and making painting possible. So,
and if you haven't subscribed, do it now.
Yeah. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and take this is a 1/4 inch bright brush.
What size is that?
Isn't that 1/4? Oh, half inch. Sorry, half inch. Yeah, just Mrs. Magoo here in the glasses. So I need sort of a faded blue, and faded blue and green. So I can take. Let's see. Maybe I have a mixing palette. I do or I don't.
Yeah, you do. Right there.
I do. Oh, yeah.
The color chart was on top of it.
Oh, color chart was on top. Yeah, okay. So we're using these Stay Wet palettes, which makes it really nice. So I'm going to take just some of this unbleached titanium, and it's going to be probably, we'll just add a tiny bit of ultramarine blue to that. See what we get. A little bit darker, a little bit more. There we go. That's unbleached titanium, and I think a little magenta, maybe a drop of that, like 1%. And let's see what else. That would be good. I think I still want it darker than that. So we'll intensify the color a little bit. And I want a little bit of yellow oxide in this because I want it to have sort of a blue-green quality. That's too much. Let's do a little bit more ultramarine blue. All right, so that's a pretty nice faded gray blue here, okay? So what I'm going to do is just using my brush strokes like this, I want to come up just up and down like that and overlap. Okay, see that? Just overlapping.
Short vertical strokes.
And there's quite a bit of paint on the brush in this particular case. This is our first layers of paint.
And this was a dry brush.
Yeah, dry brush. There's no water on it. It's coming up here like this. Now someone's going to say, I'm doing this 16 by 20. What brush should I use? Perhaps a bigger one. Depending on the size of your painting, it depends on the brushes that you might want to use for that. All right. Now, I know I want something a little bit darker in here, so blue and magenta, ultramarine blue and magenta make a pretty good purple. If we had a little bit of... Okay, so that's a little bit darker than I want there. So, but maybe I could mix a bit of that color into this and come up with something slightly darker up in here. That's a little bit darker. So I might just weave in this color in here like this, using the side of the brush, sort of suggesting that there's some variation in the color of the trees. Okay. Maybe come down here and have this a little bit darker. See, it's a little bit darker right in there.
We can't see that.
Well, okay, why not?
Because it's nowhere in their image.
All right, so it's a little bit darker right there. See that right there? And I'm doing some of this darker stuff right here. Okay. All right, now I'm going to just take some more of the the unbleached titanium and come in here like this while this is still. So let me just rinse the brush and I'll wipe it off. And then I'm going to take a little of the unbleached titanium here while this is still wet, barely touching this now. And we're adding the highlights to this too. See, there's like 3 tones of color in here. That's too much paint. You see that? If you do that, it's way too much paint. So let's wipe that off the brush and take a little, we'll just tap like mopping a floor. We'll just pick up a little of that and move it around. And I think I'd like a little bit of yellow with that. So I have this little bit of a green hint to it, maybe tiny bit of phthalo, like 1%. Phthalo is like kryptonite. There you go. And more of the unbleached titanium. There we go. That's a nice blue-gray color. Now, one thing you can do is to test the paint colors. If you get too much paint on the brush, just wipe some of it off like that. Come in here and layer that on like that. And then right up in here, it's a little bit, there's a little lighter spot. I like, kind of like that. And that was a good color. So you learned some new color mixes today from that. All right, so that's our background.
Well, that's your fourth at the top.
Yeah, so that's way in the back here. And let's do a little bit of this color coming down into here like that. Let's bring that down a little further like that. So let's just take a break for a second. I want to have John pause the video for 1 minute, and I'm going to dry this.
Okay.
All right, now as we come, when I dried it, it got a little darker than I wanted. So I will come in here and do something like this. Again, lighten up that color, kind of wipe it off the brush, tap it off, and come up in here.
I just don't understand why acrylics do that.
I know, but they dry darker. So if you understand that a little bit, you can...
you learn to adjust for it.
You adjust for it, right? You just know you want something lighter up in here in a couple of cases. There you go, like that. So just, you can always go back and make a few adjustments. All right, now let's take some of this unbleached titanium and some black and some yellow. And let's make this, that's sort of an interesting green color, isn't it? Sort of a grade green. Now I'm going to take some ultramarine blue and add with that. Okay. More ultramarine blue. Okay. Now that's going to be the under color for this meadow. Here like this. Come up in here like that. And this will be the underpainting for this. One nice thing about, painting, we can paint something like this fairly quickly when we're doing a when we're doing a premiere, is because we can then take the time and dry some stuff that we couldn't normally. All right, I'm going to take a little bit more of that ultramarine blue, put a little bit of that in there like that. Now, what I'm going to do here, and this is what we encourage all of you to take more time doing, is drying. And I think that's something I see people not doing. All right, so you're saying, why this color is light? So why did I do that? I did that because I want this underneath it. I want the darker color underneath it. And so I'm going to dry that. Now I'm going to get that dark color off the brush and wring it out. And then I want a lighter color to go on top. And because this lighter color is going to be on the light side of my grayscale, which is, give me 1 second. Let's just unhook this. All right, here's a grayscale. And if you were doing a black and white of this, you can see this light color is pretty much in this area. Do you see that? Here's the grayscale, but it's certainly not over on this side. The underpainting is, that's this. But if you're going to mix a color and it's going to fall on this side of the grayscale, you must either start with a light color like white or buff titanium or yellow first. It's going to be 98% that and something else. All right? So we talk about this a lot. I think a lot of you guys, you paint a lot, you get to chatting in the premieres, maybe you don't come back and watch the video, and it's kind of easy to forget that stuff, so I hope you got it. Here's some buff titanium. Here's a little bit of phthalo blue.
They're going to remember when it comes test time.
Yeah, and then I'm going to take a little bit of this yellow there from
That's the Holbein Deep.
That's the Holbein, but it could be a marigold, or you could use cad. Now, I'm going to take some white, believe it or not. This isn't light enough for me. So I'm lightening it up a bit, and I still want it more of a blue-green color. So I want that would be phthalo blue, like less than 1% of phthalo blue in there. Okay, phthalo blue. There you go. So that's the color I want. That's that light, soft green color. Again, wipe the brush off, try it again. Now we're just going to come down over this, keeping the brush very flat and barely touching it. Drag your brush down. You don't see globs of paint on here. If you have a glob of paint, wipe it off on the towel. Okay?
You're going to be putting on too much paint.
You're putting on too much. We're just going to come on down here like this and very gently overlap this. Okay, and as we come down further, I'm going to add a bit of cad yellow light to this. And just a little bit here into these colors, barely touching it. We can warm it up a little bit because this is closer. This little part of the picture is closer than the other part. So you see, this is closer than that. So we can warm that up a bit. Now, I think I'll take a little bit more of the buff titanium, and I still want this a bit lighter in the back. See, it dried a little bit darker than I want still. So, and I still want that blue-gray teal kind of color. So let's come back over this. Put some more phthalo in here. Okay, so let's come back over here like that. I'll do another little layer, kind of mixing it around. It's like 3 colors now. This is what makes good painting, is understanding how to layer. Okay, like that. And even some of this could be in here. We can add a little bit like that. Okay, so that's our distant. That's our distant meadow back there. And I almost could put a little of that, maybe a little bit of that, and I don't want it in my trees, but I wanted something a little bit lighter back here too. So I'm going to lighten this up a bit. Here's some oh, look at that. Just some unbleached titanium. Brush is dirty. Put that on there. See what I mean? Just a dab. All right, so moving on. Let's just not make this too complicated. Moving on. One thing we can do with a larger brush is we can paint the dark background color in here, which we know is going to be burnt umber and yellow. And burnt umber and a little bit of yellow. And a tiny bit of black. A little bit more yellow. Maybe a little bit of burnt umber. A little bit of burnt sienna. Let's see. All right, yeah, there you go. Kind of a brown-green color. And that's going to be our underneath color for this part of the meadow.
Looks like you grabbed a bigger brush, probably a 3/4 inch.
Yeah, good. Bigger brush here. That's the color. I want this a little bit greener, so I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow and the black and maybe some blue.
That was phthalo green.
Phthalo green. Phthalo blue. We're not using any greens here. We're mixing them. So here we go.
Looks like green.
Yeah, no, that's phthalo blue. But this is, again, a kind of a dark green color here that's got to be underneath all the flowers. All right, so there's that. Okay, so then, you might as well, if you're going to do something like this, put a little water on the brush. If I do that, then I'll wipe it off so there's no water. Might come up here and just spread this around a little bit more than it is. take a little bit of this orange color right here and just look kind of like a light orange color. We're going to put some flowers in here, but I'm going to go ahead and add some of that while I'm here. Okay. This is still wet, see what I mean? And I can just sort of suggest that these are, you know, I don't know if you'll see these or not. I think you will, though. Again, I want to come down. It's a little 8x10 canvas. It's not the best, so it takes a little bit of paint to cover it. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do, I'll put the big brush away, is that we're going to go ahead and put in our trees. And we're going to mix a ultramarine blue and...
Did you want to try anything?
No.
Okay.
We're going to mix an ultramarine blue and our magenta and some burnt umber. And I want to come up here like that and suggest this dark color. All right. Now, as I come up here into this area, I'm going to suggest some trees. Okay, like this for the top edge of this. But the rest of this is all going to be dark. So I don't have to, you know, a lot of times you guys worry about the silliest things. And I want you to see how fast you can cover this. This does not require anything. A little bit more blue, a little bit more magenta, a little bit more blue. Are we out of blue? Here we go. All right, so I'm going to come up here like this. This I know I want all dark. And as I come up around using just the tip of my brush here, I'm going to suggest a tree up here like that. And this will be dark. Come out over the over our meadow just a little bit with the dark. Okay, because this is the color that's underneath the color of all these trees. See that? So that's why we're doing it like this. Okay. And again, I've got some sort of little dark tree right in here. Use the corner, just the edge of this brush, just the corner of it. This is a Bristol one, and they work perfect for this. Make sure you have enough paint, and I don't have any more ultramarine blue out, so I have to stop here and get that. Why don't you pause for a second, John? Well, I get that. All right, so I found the color. No sense in you wasting time with me looking for my colors. All right, so I'm going to put some yellow with this now, and we're going to add, you know, sort of the green flavor to this. But it's still dark. It's all dark. This is all dark along here like that. Because that's the color underneath the color underneath the color, right? That's, everybody says, how do you know? Well, you start with the dark. Acrylics, you start with the darkest colors first. So you start with the farthest thing away in a landscape, darkest colors first, yes? So now what I want to do is add some lighter trees. And so I'm going to dry this. Donald, pause. Okay, so if you've got we've got this much done, I'm kind of looking again as things dry to how much lighter do I want it. Of course, this printout is not as, if we had printed this out on a very good piece of paper, it wouldn't be quite this washed out. It's a very washed out printout, just more for tracing on. I've got this on an iPad, so I've got a little better colors than we're dealing with here. But we can talk about shapes. Like, for instance, like right here, there's a house. This is a little Monopoly house here. Let's see if I can. Don't like want to keep this level here. You want to keep the roof line level. Okay. This line and this line are twins. These two lines are twins. Okay. And then we've got another little house, kind of facing this way. And it's a little taller. It might be just, well, probably more like that. And then another little barn part that goes down like this. This comes over that far. And you don't really see, this is the building here like that. It's about basically what you're seeing here. So let's move this back a little bit like that. And then make an adjustment. Okay. We're suggesting there's our house. And there's our, okay, so then if you've got our house here, you might want to just kind of make a note of where you want some lighter stuff. You've got some lighter vegetation here. You've got like almost a little path here. Some lighter stuff here. Whatever, you need to help yourself see where the lights are and the darks are. Okay. All right, so that's kind of what I do, just to find my way around. So let's just take some white into this blue color that we made here before, a little bit of white, and tiny bit of orange to it, because that will gray that a little bit, just that cadmium orange. Okay, let's come on up here like this and paint the roofs in of the house so you don't lose them. Okay. I haven't decided if I'm going to put that other extra detail in this house or not. May or may not. Okay. So this is coming like that. Again, this is a very rough little piece of canvas. It's not the best, but it's all right. And then we're going to take a little bit of yellow oxide and burn umber and white. Brush is still dirty. Come under here like that. See, there's the side of this house. Something a little darker here. This is there's gonna be a plant here, so you're not gonna see that much of this one. And it's always a little darker under the eaves when you're painting buildings. This will be darker here. And we'll make this one lighter. May come back and lighten that, but that gives us a pretty good start on this little group of houses. So we know that the little farm buildings, we know that the roof needs to still be lighter than what we've got, but that gives us at least a good start. Yes. This is a fun painting because it's all into sort of these blues and greens, and we're going to start with the back ones. And again, I'm going to take some buff titanium, come over here like that, some phthalo blue and ultramarine blue, like that. Tiny bit of cad yellow light, add to that. Okay, it's sort of this turquoisey color. I like that color. I want that in some places, but not right here. So
save it for later.
So we'll save that for later. Let's take a little of that, put some black in it, and see what we get. That gives us more of it. Let's see how that grayed that green down a little bit. So I know that, for instance, I've been mixing. Let's see, I want something a little bit lighter here. So I might come up here and say, I want a little bit lighter blue tree up in here. Okay, so it's going to get that light off my brush. And Maybe there's going to be something lighter here in front. Let's take just a little bit of this unbleached titanium. Let's say that I want something lighter here. Just using the edge of my brush here, I'm just going to tap that in. All right. And come back in here with some blue tones, and just a little bit of white in these two blues. And say here's some blue tones to this hill. All right, so we're going to I'm going to start changing the colors a little bit. And seeing where we want to put these kind of blue-purple tones that are going to be coming up here like that. Because everything's going to get overlapped. See what I mean? Everything's getting overlapped. I really like these colors right here. I want some of that up here like that. Some of that sort of purpley tone up here. A little tree that maybe has some of those colors in it. And where else could I put that? Well, I know I'm going to want it down in here. So that's really nice up in here. I'm going to want some of that purple tree, kind of purpley blue tree. It's all different colors here. But remember, you're only dealing with lights and darks, okay? So if I'm saying I want something sort of a little bit more purpley over in this corner, we want something a little bit purplier down in here. Add a little more blue. I can mix as I go. Add a little more phthalo blue. A little bit more ultramarine. And I just have to keep some of my dark spots out. Okay, got something coming through here like that. A little bit of that color. This is the fun part for me when I'm doing this, because you're talking about your lightest colors are going to be up in here like this, because the light's hitting. So the top of the trees are going to be lighter because the light's hitting them, and you get as you go down, it gets darker. Now, if you lose some dark, you can put it back for sure. You can do that. And that you can make a very dark green, just ultramarine blue and yellow, and maybe a little yellow oxide to it. That's a pretty good dark green. So I can put a little dark green in this area. Okay, even suggest some on this tree. So as I go through and I start putting in colors, I always ask myself, is it a lighter, darker color? Is it more green? Is it so dark you don't see it? What am I looking at? Okay. What am I looking at? What am I missing? I know, for instance, I want something very light up in here between these trees. And I'll put that. So as I'm talking about this, John, you and I, we do a lot of personal art coaching, but I do it, and John, we always have new stuff for the Academy that we're releasing, and various degrees of difficulty. And it came out to my attention, and I may have talked about this before, but I feel like talking about it again, is that somebody wrote and they said, well, Ginger doesn't teach me how to paint from my own photos. Okay, so I want you to stop and think about this for a minute. When you're painting something, when you're learning to paint, you're learning a language. It may not be a spoken language or too verbal, but you're definitely learning a language. All right? So I'm going to lighten up this meadow again. Just going to dry brush this over it. You're definitely learning a language, yes and yes. And so if you thought about it, well, if you just decided just for fun, that maybe you'd take up, say, you're going to learn German or Russian or Chinese or some other language that you don't know how to speak, yes? And the first thing you probably learn the word for chair and bathroom and the elevator and airport or whatever, whatever you
important
think stuff that you think you're going to know to get around. But and then then you learn maybe how to put something in a sentence. And then you learn how to
make a paragraph. Then a chapter.
And then a chapter.
Then a story.
And then a story. But very few. But you're not trying to write. I want to write my own original novels in Russian. I mean, you're a far cry from that. Okay, that's not something. What people try to do is they try to rush the process. Are you rushing the painting process? Are you rushing the learning? You see someone that maybe paints better than you, that you perceive that they have, and you're thinking, well, she didn't teach me how to do that. Well, you can't skip stuff. I mean, I can tell you over and over again, like I'm doing here, where there's a light, there's a dark. But you really can't skip. You can't skip the process. You can't skip the process of the basics of learning how much paint to put on the brush, how to spell the words. In other words, how to put them in a sentence. I'll tell you what. When I went to college and took a lot of art classes, and I was amazed at how they just did assignments. They didn't tell me anything, and I said, well,
that's all I got too.
You just got assignments. Do this, and then everybody criticized how you did it wrong, and they let the peanut gallery of the class criticize too, right?
They didn't tell you how to correct it or how to fix it. They just said, well,
this isn't right, or this isn't good. Well, any fool can see it isn't good, so what am I paying you for, right?
Yeah.
But what you're, let's do something a little darker in here. Kind of lost some of my darks a little bit. So what you're talking about here, if you really are serious about wanting to learn to paint, you really want to care, you just don't want to watch these YouTubes because they're kind of slightly entertaining. What the heck, watch these, and that's fine too. If that's your goal, then you really can't, you've got to buckle down and start with the 1 and 2 cookie lessons, the beginner lessons, and master those techniques. And for instance, the other day, somebody posted a picture. This will be aired quite a way, so you won't know who it is, but somebody posted a picture the other day on Facebook, and it was a box of cookie lesson, and which was meant to be a larger painting, did it very small, that did it very badly, and
poorly.
Said, this is, very poorly, I mean, and I know the artist that did it, and capable of much more than that, and said, well, this is what I felt like doing today. Well, that's okay. But, when you're talking about a box of cookie lessons, which is our most advanced stuff, right? Things, we talk about paintings that end up in museums and stuff that, that we're duplicating in some of these from the old masters. You don't want to take 5 minutes and then say, that's the best I could do. You want to watch the video and really see how say, well, I don't have that skill yet. What other, if you don't think you have that skill yet, and see, I keep adding lights in here too. Like, can you see that? Keep adding a few lights and darks, and on our pictures, light going on top. What you want to do is find something like that maybe is more of a beginner lesson, and see where you are with that, or an intermediate lesson, or whatever. Okay. But again, I would say don't beat yourself up over things like that. Just, if you can't do it, it's okay. I mean,
it gives you a goal.
It's a goal.
I can't
but
do
just
it today.
because doesn't mean you won't do it tomorrow. And we've seen people do all kinds of interesting things.
We had one student that was for like 3 years, and they did a painting 3 years ago, and then they went back to it and did it again, and it was night and day difference.
Yep.
But you do have to put in a little bit of effort. If you have to decide what you want to do in your art journey.
Yeah, and if you think about what anyway, that's what I would just tell you, is that don't beat up on yourself if you're not quite up to where you feel that you should be. Ask yourself because you could be just great at Impressionism and then couldn't do a palette life painting to save your life, or be very good at a landscape but not do a dog. And just says you can't do a dog doesn't make you a bad artist. Most artists specialize like doctors And one of the reasons it's hard to, and some of the best artists in the world used to specialize in some of the old ones. There was a guy named Lord Leighton, could look him up. And he did these beautiful, I mean, almost, it's like he'd gone back to Rome and photographed stuff, okay? And I'm adding a little bit more brighter greens now because I'm in front, see? And anyway, he did gorgeous paintings, and he was so popular. And then one day, he wasn't. His paintings went out of fashion, people weren't buying it, but he didn't know how to paint anything else. And so it wasn't able to make the living as an artist that he wanted. Let's take a little bit of this black color, because he didn't know how to paint anything else. He was a good artist, but he couldn't paint the other stuff, right? And that's most of the artists that you see that they're end up museums. They just didn't stumble upon this gift and say, "Oh my gosh, I love being an artist. This is so great." They went to art school of some kind. They went to school, and they really took the time to really, kind of learn some stuff that they needed to know.
Yeah, they learned from the masters before them.
Yeah.
They studied their works.
Yeah, they were able. They would go to the museums and sit. Nowadays, you have to make appointments like 10 years in advance, I think, to be able to go paint in the Louvre. But they used to go to the Louvre and paint in the Louvre and these museums, and they'd paint the works of some of these old masters. And putting some darks back. So we lost a few little darks, so we're just putting a few back here like that as we talk, right? So it wasn't like they just suddenly
woke up one day and wrote the master.
Yeah, they didn't wake up. My daughter Cinnamon used to say, "You can't put a quarter in and get an artist out." She used to, somebody should just whip this out here, because what I mean. There's a lot of thought involved. Even on a lesson like this, there's hours of planning for our lessons, all of them. Why don't you just sit down there and say, "Oh, I'll just paint this, what the heck," right? There's no what the heck, you guys. There just isn't. So, you can enjoy the process, okay, which we suggest you do. Enjoy the process of the fun. It's very relaxing. Very relaxing to paint. Can be a very good thing for your mental health. Just
very
as good for your... Huh?
Very therapeutic.
Yeah, it is, and people know that. Okay, so now the center of interest is kind of around these houses. So I'm making a little brighter here because it's around there. So I want to kind of draw your eye over here a little bit just by lightening up some of these greens. Okay, like that. Something a little bit lighter back in here. And boy, this Meadow isn't doing it for me. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take some zinc white and we're going to lighten up that Meadow some. Because it's still not as, I wanted that green, but it's just not bright enough. Does that make sense? So I will take a clean, dry brush and take a little zinc white, wipe it off on a towel like that. And then I'll just lighten up this Meadow a bit. You put it on the brush, wipe all of it off.
Which really never makes sense to me.
I know, because you just want a little tiny bit of this, like to kind of suggest something's a little bit lighter. See how we just sort of lighten that up a bit? Tap off the excess. Oh, there's something lighter there too, right? Something coming through. Maybe something coming through here like this, over this. You just sort of put that out of focus a little bit. So now we'll take some of that same zinc white and lighten up these houses. You see how dark they got? This farm thing. Little farm things.
Farm things.
Farmy things.
Called buildings.
Little buildings. There you go.
Things. You don't see a tractor. It's probably inside one of the farmy things.
Yeah, there's a tractor there. Now you see how those came forward, right? And I want to break this up a little bit here. All right. So now we've got something a bit brighter. And if you haven't tried these Stay Wet palettes, it's really nice because you can go back into color mixtures and add them. Just add a drop here. You don't have to remix all the time, which is pretty nice. You've got a lot of leeway. Okay. All right. So we're just giving the impression of some building here like that. Cool, right? So I think I almost want some more dark green blue bushes here. Kind of more dark blue. Take those out. There you go. Let's bring those up a little higher than I had them. There we go. Here, we lost some dark in here. Let's put that back. There's little patterns of dark. Think about like doing a puzzle. That's good. You're just adding the colors. Ooh, did you see all the water on that there? All right, so now I'm gonna come down and I'm gonna work on the meadow. The front meadow, not the back one.
The major meadow.
Major meadow, but let me break this shape up first here. I want a little tree in here. There we go. I've kind of lost this tree here. Okay, there you go. So now you can we got the feeling of depth in the valley. All right, so I'll change brushes. And now we've got this big wide one. Now we're going to start, remember the light's coming on, sun's shining on top, so the darker colors are underneath, lighter ones on top. There's going to be like 3 greens here. Here's some black and yellow, which is mostly yellow with a little bit of black. That's a nice olive green right there. And we'll put a little bit of burnt sienna in it. There we go. Now let's just using our brush here, just like this, holding it very flat, barely touching it. So some of this,
just dragging
the paints on this side, kind of wipe most of it off. I'm dragging this down like this. See what I'm doing? Just dragging this down, leaving some of this dark area underneath showing. So the question then remains, when do you dry? Well, for me right now, if I don't want to mix all the colors together, I would dry this. So this is a good time. We'll take a quick break and I'll dry it. Okay, we're back?
Of course.
So now we're going to take some white and yellow and get our next layer. A little bit more yellow. Let's take a little bit of that orange color too. That's pretty. Mix that up a little more. Maybe some unbleached titanium. Let's see what color green do we have. That's nice. Not yellow enough. Let's try cad yellow medium. What do we got? Do I like that? Sometimes you just mix a color and you just don't like it. Don't keep adding to that. Go somewhere else. Don't keep trying to pour, that, just don't keep going into the same pile and saying, if I had enough paint, it would just like, that would be like, having something too salty and just keep adding more food into the dish, hoping that at some point it would be less salty. Sometimes you overdid it and you got to start again with the color mixture. Okay, so you're again, just barely touching it. Just tapping this across like this. Sometimes I'm tapping and pulling. now, just sort of tapping with this wide brush. I think I want a little bit more of the phthalo green. As we come forward here, put some greens in here. Something a little darker. A little bit more. Ultramarine blue makes your darker, makes some darker greens. Put a little burnt sienna in that. Again, there's a lot of colors in this meadow. Just some of them. Now, I'm going to rinse the brush and go back with the light ones. And this is a good landscape to do while we're as a premiere, because that allows me to dry. Ooh, look at that! It allows me to dry so much more in between layers, and because that's all acrylic painting is layers. Someone's going to ask the question, could you do this with a palette knife? Yeah. Probably a good one to do with a palette knife. But it's amazing what you can do, just remembering that the lights go on top. Okay, we'll wipe off the brush. I want something a little bit lighter back up in here, near this barn. And I've got sort of a pattern going through here. You see how these bright greens start bringing the eye forward. You see what I mean? To just see, put a little bit of yellow oxide with that green. Or rather, not yellow oxide, a little bit of that buff titanium. I want something lighter over here. Ooh, too much paint. I want something a little bit lighter in this area. And a little bit more blue-green, too. Phthalo blue and white. A blue-green color. So as I get a color I don't want, I can either dry it or paint over it, but I'm not touching. I'm telling you what I'm not doing is touching hard.
Get a lot of depth in that field with all the different colors.
Oh, don't you?
Shades.
And I'm going to come back even with some of this darker brown, even in here, a few places where I missed it, or maybe lost a bit, before I dry it and start adding the final color. So now at this point, well, I can dry it or just let that sit there, but my house is still too dark. So here's a little bit of zinc white on the brush. Put it on twice. Do you ever do that? Put it on, wipe it off, and then put it on again. That's a fully loaded brush. This brush sat in the water, you see. So zinc white allows your colors to show through. So if you just did this with white, you wouldn't, it allows, again, it allows stuff to show through, which is important. Okay, so you see how the little farm buildings are showing up now. So, using a smaller brush, let's try this one. Going to start adding some yellow flowers. Put a little bit of, and wipe off the brush. Tap on some lighter ones. See, look. If you don't wipe it off, you'll get paint from the heel of it. Okay, so I'm going to say I want some lighter colors here. This is all impressionistic painting. You get back from it, it's a field of flowers. Remember, there's blue greens and there's yellow greens. Yellow being a color that will bring your eye forward. And you want little areas of lights and darks. Sort of making a path for your lighter colors. If I put paint on the brush, I like to wipe it, I like to tap it off. Some of that yellow is pretty. We're going to put some of these marigold color flowers in here. Just suggest a field of those. And you just keep tapping, you guys. You just keep tapping.
You keep adding layers. I'm probably on layer number 6 or 7 now.
Yeah, probably, huh? Just sort of barely. Now, at this point, I'm just sort of dragging the brush and suggesting that color rather than tapping it. But I'm suggesting that that's the colors in here. A little bit more greens. As long as I don't have to dry too much, as long as I stay in the greens and yellows, because that's all part of that. Just some yellow oxide. So we're not doing bright flowers in front. Our center of interest is this back building. So what we want to say is that that's where we want to draw the attention. So we're not going to do a lot of detail and grasses coming up this way in the front. We don't want to do that. What we can do is, all we can do is sort of brighten up, kind of blue the greens up a little bit as you come up this way. A little less olive, more of the blue greens. See what I'm doing? It's a great study in greens, isn't it, John?
Yeah, you got a few greens in there.
Now I'm going to take some of that color, this grade green, and I want to come up here on this bush before the house.
It's pretty impressive because you don't have any green paint out.
Yeah, don't you think so? Yeah, we haven't put any greens out. You've just been mixing them. Okay. So what happened if we had a little orange on those roofs? Maybe there's a little bit. They weren't as kept up as, something else. Or let's try a little purple color. We've got an ultramarine blue and magenta makes a lovely purple. It's got some yellow on the brush, so that's going to gray it. Okay, so that house shows up a little more. Maybe we could even do a little bit of, let's try that, a little bit of green separating them. All right, so now the thing that we're going to ask ourselves is I want to put some flowers in here now. I've pretty much done what I wanted to do as far as the reference photo, yes? Do I see anything I need to do in the reference photo? Maybe, oh yeah, I do. Let's see, maybe I can, remember I told you we made that great light blue color. Maybe we can have a little more of that somewhere. Just using the corner of the brush, just kind of dab in it, right? And break this up. Okay. So we've got these trees. And, oh, I love that. I'm going off that way, or no. And I could do one more layer of light. Now this is where a grass brush or a brush that is designed for grasses can come in very nicely. This one is a ruby satin filbert grass one. We've got
And our fur brushes.
These are fir brushes too. They work for grass or fir. This is a Princeton, grainer. So I might try that one. I like to keep them all in the same jar. I have all these different ones because once they're out among the general population of brushes, I forget. I can't tell who's who. They all have to live in their own little space. So I want to say that I want some lighter. Flowers here. And I'm barely touching it. Just tapping, not pulling at this point. I think we could bring the eye a little bit closer here. We'll just be like Goldilocks and try a few different ones and see which ones we like. You don't want to get too much detail or get too bogged down with this, because again, this is supposed to be a very impressionistic painting. Just sort of fast and quick and easy. It's just, I want you to layer more than you've been doing. If I do zinc white with a lighter green, I can lighten up the green without changing the flowers too much. See, again, I want to bring your eye, take the eye and bring it over here to these plants, with the plants, to bring it over here to the, ooh, look at that. We didn't want to do that. That's too dark. Put some brown with that. Okay. So what can you do with that? Nothing. We're going to stop and dry this because that got too dark. So we have to dry it. Just can't keep dumping paint on it. Good to know, right? Yes. All right, so I see a couple things. So I wanted to lighten that up again. I got too much there. I dried that. And barely touching it. Okay. Now I think I'd like some red orange, some red kind of poppy flowers in it. My greens have been dried. So I want to tap in some color now. Into my Meadow, and I think I'm going to switch brushes. Fun as that one was, let's try another one. Let's try this one. This is the filbert grass one from Silver. So let's try it on something first, shall we? And if you're not sure, test it on something. You have a little scrap tester. So let's see, how's that? Well, how am I gonna like that? Yeah. I think I want a little magenta and red, maybe something a little darker. You don't have to have it everywhere. That's the trick. You don't have to have this everywhere. You can tap in. Could you use a fan brush? Yeah, I think so. Maybe a little one. And bring some of this color up in here a little bit more. Just so we'll pull it down. Not talking about it too much.
That's looking nice.
Yeah, it's a nice look, isn't it?
Not overly bright, not overly slapping you in the face, not taking away from the focus of the buildings.
No. We're keeping the light stuff up kind of around up in here. And maybe we'll do a little bit of light in this corner to kind of bring your eye up here. This is just kind of like a little arrow of light.
Kind of leading your way in.
Yeah, kind of going shh, right? And I feel like we could do some blue-green colors here too, which would be really pretty. Something a little brighter blue-green in here with just a touch of, say, burnt umber to tone that down. Well, umber would be good too, just a little bit of that blue-green color. I don't need a lot of it. Okay, so that's a little brighter than I want, and that's okay. The thing about acrylics is that you can, okay, so I had a little of that color. I really don't want to bring that blue forward. What I'll do is I'll dry that and then just put some green over it. Oh, it's there. We've suggested it's there, but it's not that much, right? And let's just put
It's there, but it's not.
Yeah. So I'm just going to tap on a few little lighter flowers up in here. Maybe some of the, these, I love a meadow full of different flowers because there's always something that's sort of blooming. And So maybe something here too. We'll just put a little of that. Now, is there an advantage between using, say, this brush and just the other one that I was using before? Well, as you can see it, you can just barely touch
Seems
it.
like you have a little bit more control with this one.
Just a tiny bit, you know. You
Yeah.
just. It's very similar to a This is the Cad Yellow Light. It's very similar to a Boy, that's bright, isn't it? A couple of spots of that, and that's all we need there. That's a little too bright here. You know, red grays green. You guys know that, right? Look what happens when you just tone that down, see? Some of that shows. So, you know, I love these, kind of this orange color that's in here like that too. I think it's very pretty. And just, again, brings your eye up. And as I'm painting this, kind of inventing it with you. You're seeing how I'm inventing it. I'm deciding whether I like one thing or don't like something.
That pulls you right to the house.
Yeah, there's not just a few of these little poppies, but you don't need too much of them. Just saying that there was something around the barn it doesn't have to be the whole meadow. Maybe the cows ate the rest of them. Right? So, I mean, that's the kind of thing, to me, that makes it really fun. Now, what I want to do here is take a small brush and just get a little more detail on the barn. This is the kind of stuff that, you know, if you like this type of lesson and, you know, how I'm explaining it, in our academy, you usually just have my voice. And this is how we do our academy lessons. Some people feel all the chatter gets a little distracting, and we answer questions. And we do when we're doing a live show, which I love answering your questions. I think that's important. Let's see what I got here. But let's see. I don't want that. Looking for my. Here we go. All right. So I want to get a little bit more definition on my barn now. Just sort of put it in. Here we go. All right. So here's this has got to be. A little darker here. And you always want, when you're doing any kind of roof, you always want a little bit of an eave where it's a little darker under the eave. Okay. It just gives it a little bit more interest. Just sort of to do a dividing between that. Let's see, something very dark here on this roof here, like that. Let's get a good separation between these two. Just clean that up a little bit. And I think that can be nice. I'm going to lighten up this area a little bit. When you put paint on your brush, I hope you wipe it off. See me do that. You put a little paint. If you don't, you end up with too much paint. I see that a lot when we do the personal art coaching, which is sort of an interesting thing because having somebody look at your artwork and say, gosh, I really think this works, but I wish you had done this or that or the other. That's the key to stuff like that. Let's get a little bit more of this light blue color. Remember, we're kind of brightening up the flowers in front, okay, of the barn. I think we need something down in here, but we'll add a little bit more of that. And I think we could see we've got this sort of straight line right here. Let's break that up with some bushes. It doesn't have to be a straight line. Sometimes you have to, it's easy to just get kind of lost in the patterns and not see the overall picture. So look out for straight lines, stuff like that. Yeah, I think what we need here just is a little bit more of the orange tones in the front here. Could always add brown to green too, to kind of make it more olive. This brush has been in the water, so it's a little damp, but I think I can do something like this, just with this like this, to suggest, ooh, let's do that, a little bit of purple. Let's put some darks back here, like this. Ooh, some blues. That's pretty. Let's do that. Now I'm seeing that. Well, I said, this is what I love about painting. Then I'll see something and I go, yeah, let's do some. My instinct was to have some blues up here. Just wasn't sure how I was going to have them. Like that. And maybe take one of these little ones. Do something here. So that what I would do here, now this is something we can do, which we couldn't do in the live show, the total live show, right? What I can do here is take a black and white of this picture and tell you, and then show you where you need a light and a dark on something. Which is kind of neat when you think about it. So let's, in a minute or so, I'll have John just pause the video and we'll just take a black and white of this. There's little brighter greens up in the front. And we'll see about connecting all this to our patterns, so that we know that we absolutely know we want this to be we really want this is like titanium now, right? Want this to be brighter, right? The roof of that house, our barn, to be brighter. And I've got to, again, your lightest light and your darkest dark are what's going to attract some sort of attention. And let's do something like this. Going to make that a light blue. To distinguish that from this one. which is here. Probably should change brushes. This is not the brush to do this with. All right, let me change brushes and actually get the brush that you would paint this with. Okay. So just do something like, there we go. There we go, like that. So okay. All right. So John, you want to do me a favor and take a picture of this, and let's see where we need to lighten or darken something.
Alrighty. Okay.
All right. Here's my black and white. So I've got some nice balance here, but my houses, the roofs could be lighter here. I'd like these to be slightly lighter. They're just a little bit too close to this one. This color back here. I'd like them to be lighter, because that's our center of interest. So that's where our lightest lights and our darkest darks have got to go. So sometimes you can get confused by color, because you think you have a good color, but it may not be a good contrast. So let's see if I can. I want something lighter up here. Let's take a little white, flatten it out on the brush, and let's come up here. The whole roof doesn't have to be painted white, but I just want enough of this white. See? Just that. So it doesn't take much, okay? Can you see the difference? Can you see it? It really doesn't take much at all. All right, so I've got that, right? And I might just take some of this color and put it in here a little bit too. I kind of like to bring your eye in a little more into the picture. And maybe even a few little reds. We talk about that, because you can overdo it, and we don't want to do that. But there we go. And let's see, something a little bit brighter. Those little white little flowers here. So this is one thing about pre-recording is these scenes get a little long too. I wonder if Sean's going to have to edit some of this out. I don't want this to be this long a video. Nobody ever watches them. Now, one way to get those houses to stand out is to put dark behind them. Because your eye goes first to the darkest dark and the lightest light, see? So just by adding some dark, and the other thing I can do is add some lighter greens. Some turquoisey colors. Let's try a little light color with this. I just want a lighter blue-green color. Around there, yep. It's amazing how much darker stuff gets as it dries. And I think that's where what happens to people, John, is that they start painting it and they think they're fine. And
then it dries and it's all dark on them.
And then nobody says, well, I understand how that happened. Well, yeah, I know. It's hard to know, but sometimes it does, and that's okay. Just lighten up some stuff up in here too. Again. So that is how you take a photograph that was just pretty much an ordinary photograph, and I redid all the colors so that I could have a better idea of how I wanted to paint it. Magenta. We don't have any of that. Didn't put any of that color in there at all, did I? That's kind of pretty, isn't it?
A little bit of pink here and there, yeah.
Just a touch, just not too much, but magenta is that, it's a color you really can't. That's one of those colors that you need to own. You really can't mix it. And it's important to know that. So, because sometimes you think, well, I'll just use red or something. If you're going to talk about certain colors, you have to have oranges and cad reds and stuff like that are really colors that are not easily mixed.
Well, you can't really mix the primaries.
No. The primary colors, you can't mix them. All right, well, I'm going to sign this. I think this is kind of fun. John, you can pause this for just a second. I want to put it in a frame, show people what that would look like.
Oh, look at that frame, huh?
How about that? Isn't that cute? This little wooden green frame. Got this at Jerry's Artorama. I wish they had it in all the sizes. They have these in all kinds of different sort of stressed old wood colors, but they don't have them in every size, which I love these frames because they must have 10 colors you can get them in. Which is really fun, I think. So I hope that by watching this video that you guys got a sense of how you might do it, a really nice little small landscape that has lots of colors. And, even though I did a little bit in the computer, I certainly it enhanced it even more. And it showed you just an impressionistic way to paint the flowers. So if you like this and you want to know more about acrylic painting and get more details and more tutorials like this, come to our Academy of Fine Art and Acrylic Painting. Join our Academy, at least as an Orange member if you want the traceables for this, if you feel like you need them. And we certainly hope you subscribe to the channel and be sure to be in our Facebook group. And normally we would have featured some of our Facebook artists on the show, but we just didn't. This is again in advance, so we don't know who you are, but we've got some plans for that. So look for that.
All right, buddy. Thanks very much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out the door, and give a thumbs up. Share it with your friends and family and enemies. Try to help us get to 100,000 yet this year. Thanks, everybody. Say goodbye, boss.
Bye, you guys.
Ginger Cook, the queen of color, with a blazing brush at the speed of light, and a blank canvas, and a hearty yes and yes. The queen of color, Ginger Cook, and her sidekick, John Little, teach you to paint acrylics.